Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly shift the energy of a room without saying a word? They don't argue, they don't beg, they simply withdraw, and suddenly, everything changes. The atmosphere gets tense. People start to notice. They begin to chase. They feel the absence. Now imagine if you did the same. If you chose stillness over reaction, silence over explanation. What would happen if you stopped being emotionally available on command? This is where your power begins. Because the moment you stop reacting, when you step back instead of lashing out, you disrupt the entire system that once controlled you. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." When you pull away and choose inner composure over outward chaos, you start to see who really panics, who gets agitated when you go quiet, who tries to provoke a response just to regain control. Their reactions say more about their need to control you than about who you really are. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You've been giving yourself away to please, to keep the peace, to avoid abandonment. With every forced yes, every instant reply, every emotional overreaction, you've handed away your energy, bit by bit, until what's left is exhaustion, frustration, that hollow feeling at the end of the day you can't quite name. Let me name it for you. You've been too available for people who didn't deserve even a second of your silence. This video isn't about turning cold or shutting down. It's about reclaiming your center. It's about understanding what Carl Jung called individuation, the process of becoming your true, integrated self. And individuation begins the moment you realize that silence can be more powerful than 1,000 words. When you retreat from reaction, not to escape, but to reflect, you step into your inner authority. So let me ask you this, heart to heart. How long will you allow your emotions to be puppeteered by other people's expectations? How long will you keep responding from wounded instinct instead of conscious choice? Maybe it's time to cut the strings, to become a mystery again. Because when you stop being accessible to everyone, everything changes. Since childhood, you've been conditioned to be available, to answer quickly, to keep others comfortable, to never say no. But here's the hidden truth most never hear. Your over-availability isn't a sign of kindness. It's a symptom of emotional captivity. And as long as you keep offering your energy without boundaries, you will be manipulated, drained, and eventually forgotten. Why? Because what's predictable becomes a tool. People use your emotional availability like a panic button. Press it when they want attention, relief, validation, then place you back on the shelf. But here's your invitation. Stop being the emotional emergency room for everyone else. Learn to say no. Learn to step back. Learn to choose yourself. When you become less available, you become more powerful. Not because you're playing games, but because you're finally living from your center, not your wounds. But the truth is, it doesn't work that way. Carl Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted, to be loved, to be seen. And often, it's this very mask that makes us too available. You say, "I'm fine," when you're emotionally suffocating. You answer messages instantly, even when you're drained. You over-explain, defend, justify, like you owe the world constant access to your soul. But here's the harsh truth. The more you show up on everyone else's stage, the more you vanish from your own. Being emotionally accessible all the time is a quiet form of self-abandonment. It's a covert way of chasing approval, dodging rejection, and managing how others perceive you. But that need for control, it steals your peace. You give away your psychic energy like it's infinite, when in fact, It's one of your most limited and sacred resources. People who demand your constant availability don't necessarily want you. They want what you offer: validation, emotional labor, distraction, presence. But the moment you shift, the moment you set boundaries, stop reacting, or simply say no, they don't say you've grown. They say you've changed, and they mean it as an insult. But it's not that you've changed, it's that you're no longer convenient. And here lies the paradox. The more available you are, the less you're valued. Because what's abundant becomes invisible. What's always there becomes taken for granted. So now ask yourself, who truly deserves your time? Who earns your attention? Who honors your presence? And maybe more importantly, who deserves your absence? But before you answer, we need to go deeper into a core question of Jungian psychology. Why do we react so automatically? Why do we feel the need to please, to respond, to prove ourselves? The answer lies in what Jung called psychic energy. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Because your energy is your most vital currency. And if you don't learn to protect it, someone else will use it against you. Carl Jung didn't view the human mind as a machine reacting on impulse. He saw the psyche as an energy system where every emotion, thought, and interaction consumes a portion of your internal power. So the question is, are you consciously choosing where your energy flows? Or is the world choosing for you? Every impulsive reaction, every unnecessary explanation, every emotional entanglement drains you. When you defend yourself against baseless criticism, when you engage in arguments to prove a point, when you try to win love from those who can't truly see you, you're leaking energy. And Jung warned, what you resist persists. The more you react, the more entangled you become. People who live in a state of emotional burnout aren't weak, they're misdirected. And here's the risk. When you're chronically exhausted, you become psychically exposed. You become easy prey. Manipulators, narcissists, energy vampires, they sense this. They see you don't know how to guard your inner resources. They know you'll react. They know you'll try to fix, to please, to explain, and they use it. Jung believed that a healthy psyche knows how to hold energy within the system, to be rooted instead of reactive, to choose presence over performance. And that's the shift we're making together, starting now. If this resonates with you, subscribe to this channel. Here, we don't chase approval, we reclaim power. We don't react, we remember. We don't perform, we individuate. Welcome back to yourself. True power begins where reaction ends. Carl Jung taught that self-mastery comes not from dominating others, but from knowing yourself deeply enough to pause before you act. It's not weakness to say no without guilt, to remain silent without fear, or to observe instead of impulsively engaging. These are signs of inner strength, of owning your psychic energy. But how often do you lose sleep over a conversation that never ended? How often do you replay arguments, searching for the perfect comeback? Every one of those moments is energy leaking from your system. Energy that could have been used to heal, to grow, to create. Instead, it's wasted keeping old wounds alive and feeding toxic emotional loops that only persist because you won't stop reacting. In Jungian terms, your psychic energy is your life force. When you protect it, you radiate presence, entering a room and commanding respect without saying a word. But when you mismanage that energy, you become reactive, fragmented, invisible. And the world? It shows no mercy to those who abandon themselves. So begin where it matters most, your triggers. What provokes an automatic reaction in you? What makes you lose your emotional center? These are the hidden drains of your vitality, the psychological cracks where your power escapes. And the solution is not to become cold or emotionless. It's to become selective, sovereign, in control of what you give and to whom. Here's where Jung's teachings become revolutionary. When you conserve your energy, you shatter the projections others place upon you, and this will disturb them. Why? Because now their silent manipulation has nowhere to land. In the next part of this journey, we'll confront the uncomfortable truth you are being fed on by those who don't scream, but subtly pull your emotional strings because you've left your buttons exposed and you react. Always. Jung called this projection, a psychological defense mechanism where people disown parts of themselves and cast them onto others. But here's the hidden danger. When you're too emotionally available, you become a blank screen for these projections, a container for everyone's unhealed wounds. Think of the friend who only appears in crisis, the partner who relies on you to fix everything, the colleague who flatters you until you set a boundary. They aren't connecting with you. They're connecting with the role you've agreed to play. Why do you play it? Because of fear. Fear of rejection, abandonment, being unloved. That's where manipulation breeds, not through force, but through guilt. You don't need to be chained. You only need to keep reacting the same way. But the moment you break the pattern, when you say no, hold your silence, or simply walk away, the illusion shatters. The false mask they placed on you slips off, and suddenly they're left facing someone they never truly knew, the real you. And worse, for them, they now have to face themselves. But not everyone is ready for that. Your unavailability is a threat. Here's why. Your absence speaks louder than words because it forces people to confront a truth they've spent years avoiding, their own emptiness. The silence you offer isn't a void, it's a mirror that reflects back the chaos, the shadows, the noise they've buried deep inside. And when that silence begins to echo, what follows? Accusations, guilt trips, emotional chaos. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you stopped being their emotional crutch. You stopped playing the role. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And your silence, it forces their darkness to surface. This is why the moment you stop responding, stop justifying, stop being available, people react. Not because you changed, but because you stopped being useful to their illusions. And this raises a critical question. Are you ready for the cost of stepping into your power? Are you prepared to be misunderstood, blamed, even rejected, simply because you chose to protect your energy? Because after the rupture comes the void, and it's in that silence, a silence you once feared, where true power is born. A power that doesn't shout, a power that watches, that chooses when and how to act, not out of impulse, but out of clarity. Welcome to the modern world, a place drowning in noise, opinions, and instant reactions. Everyone wants the last word. Everyone is shouting, but very few understand the brutal, strategic power of silence. Not passive silence, not cowardly withdrawal, but conscious, surgical silence, the kind that Carl Jung called transformative. Because when you stop reacting, you start seeing. You see the manipulations, the energetic traps, the patterns of self-betrayal. And the moment you stop feeding those cycles, something extraordinary happens. You take your energy back. Have you ever noticed how people panic when you don't respond? When you don't justify, explain, or engage? It's not that they miss you. It's that your silence strips them of narrative control. While you speak, they still hold a piece of the script. But when you're silent, the entire script burns. This kind of silence isn't absence. It's amplified presence. It's sovereignty. It's saying, I choose not to invest my energy in this. Jung described individuation, the journey of becoming your true self, as a path that demands separation. Not isolation, but discernment. Because only in silence can you hear yourself again. Yes, it comes with a cost. You will lose people who only valued your utility. You'll confuse those who projected their needs onto you. They'll say you've changed, that you're distant or cold, but they never really saw you. They saw what you gave. And when the giving stops, so does their attention. This is the truth. The more you evolve, the more intentional you become with your voice. You realize every word is an energetic transaction, and not everyone deserves access to your truth. Sometimes, silence isn't retreat. It's self-respect. It's power. It's clarity. It's the language of those who have nothing left to prove. Because silence doesn't ask permission. It doesn't justify. It simply is. And in a world addicted to reaction, that's revolutionary. And those who feel threatened by your silence reveal just how much they relied on your imbalance to maintain control. But the most powerful silence isn't the one that unsettles others. It's the silence that rebuilds you from within. It's the silence that connects you to something beyond the need for approval. It's in this quiet, internal space, free from the demands of others, that you begin to reclaim your energy, to reconnect with your essence. And that's what we're going to talk about next. Because it's not enough to cut out the external noise. You must also learn to consciously direct your energy, where it flows, where it stays, and where it must never be wasted again. It's time to become selective with your own soul. If you're in the process of reclaiming your energy and learning to set boundaries, my book, Beyond the Shadow, will give you practical tools and insights from Carl Jung's most important ideas. The link is in the pinned comment. But here's the truth. Intellectual awareness is useless without action. If you keep saying yes when you mean no, replying to messages that drain you, engaging in meaningless conversations, and maintaining relationships born of habit, not connection, then you're simply deceiving yourself. Real transformation begins when you decide, firmly and unapologetically, to become selective. And that requires emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability is not about being cold or arrogant. It's about no longer being endlessly accessible, at any time, for any reason, to anyone. It's about reclaiming your energy, your time, your peace. It begins with small, deliberate acts. Not replying right away, breathing before reacting, walking away from a fight that isn't worth your soul, turning off your phone without guilt, saying, not today, saying, I'm not interested, saying, I'm not getting involved. And most importantly, you don't have to justify your absence. You don't have to explain your silence. You owe no one anything but your own well-being. And for many people, that is unforgivable. Because when you stop explaining, you remove their ability to keep you trapped in the role of the helpful, always available, emotionally convenient version of yourself. Carl Jung understood that every journey of individuation must pass through isolation, not depressive isolation, but sacred isolation, a period of inner retreat. where you relearn to hear your own voice, where you rebuild yourself, not through the eyes of others, but from your own center. Want a true test of your growth? Watch who pulls away when you become more silent. Watch who tries to provoke you when you no longer react. Watch who accuses you of changing when you start protecting your energy. These aren't signs that you're doing something wrong. They're evidence that you're finally free. Being unavailable will feel uncomfortable at first. You'll feel guilty. You'll wonder if you're being selfish. People will say you're too harsh, but that's part of the process. You've spent a lifetime being conditioned to come second. It's only natural that reclaiming yourself will feel like rebellion, because it is. Conscious unavailability is the foundation of self-determination. When you say no to the world, you're saying yes to yourself. When you walk away from a toxic space, you're declaring that your peace is priceless. And when you stop explaining, something unexpected happens. You begin to be respected, even if only by a few, because not everyone is ready for this kind of presence. Your absence will expose wounds they're not willing to face, but that's no longer your burden to carry. It will reveal how much others depended on your emotional chaos to feel in control. And at that moment, the rupture comes. With the rupture come the pain, the loneliness, the estrangement, the feeling that you are losing something, when in truth, you are just freeing yourself. But what happens after the distancing? What is born from the silence? In the final part, we will explore the rebirth that only occurs when you have the courage to be misunderstood, to be alone, and to become whole on your own. It's time to understand why the loneliness of the strong is the path to true freedom. When you stop being available to everyone, something profound begins to happen. First comes silence, an uncomfortable silence that seems to scream inside you. You wonder if you did the right thing, if you are being too harsh, if you are losing people who liked you. But gradually, this silence transforms. It begins to cleanse, to calm, to heal. Then comes solitude, but not the solitude of absence. It is the solitude of total presence, your own presence. The solitude of the strong, the solitude of one who no longer betrays themselves to keep others close. And in that space, where once there was confusion, clarity enters. Where there was anxiety, peace arrives. Where there was neediness, a new kind of strength emerges. The strength of being whole within yourself. Carl Jung said that the process of individuation, becoming who you truly are, requires distancing yourself from the collective, disidentifying from the mask, and walking alone for a while. And that is exactly what you are doing when you decide to become unavailable. You are not fleeing the world. You are returning to yourself. At this point, you stop being a reactor and become a creator. You cease being shaped by circumstances and begin shaping your reality from within. The people who feel uncomfortable with your absence reveal they never wanted you. They wanted the role you played. Now that you no longer fit, they don't know what to do with you. And that is liberating. You will lose people, but you will find yourself. You will distance yourself from places, but you will reconnect with your essence. You will become misunderstood, but finally, you will begin to be respected. Because when you are no longer available for anything, you become valuable, rare, unforgettable. Don't be fooled. This is a rebirth, a new beginning, the start of a life where you no longer accept emotional crumbs, mind games, or voids disguised as affection. Now, you only accept what resonates with your peace, your truth, your wholeness. If you have made it this far, it's because a part of you is already ready for this new path. A part of you has already understood that being loved means nothing if for that you must abandon yourself. True self-love begins when you choose yourself, even if it costs you to be alone for a while. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, or even hated in the name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being you? If this message touched you, if it made sense, write in the comments, I choose my peace. Let's see how many here are ready for this transition. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It's more important than you imagine. See you there.